Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Scholl. I am the lead learner at the South Carolina Education Association's Center for Educator Wellness and Learning. Welcome to tonight's live stream. We're really excited about our opportunity to speak with a local association, the Charleston County Education Association. We'll get to our guest in just a minute. Before we get started, I just want to remind people of a couple of things. One is we are going to have to fight this voucher scheme battle once again this year. Proponents of these vouchers, which would divert funds from our public schools to private schools, are intent on getting that passed this year. The bill is called S39, and if you would like to use your voice to speak out against these voucher schemes, you can go to the scea.org/S39. That's the scea.org/S39. Make your voice be heard. It is critical that we protect the institution of public schools and not use public school funds or any public funds to support unaccountable private schools that can discriminate against students. They can discriminate against gay students. They can discriminate against students with disabilities. And this is just something that we don't want to see public tax dollars going to. What we need to do is fully fund and support our public schools and our educators and pay them well, compensate them well, treat them well, and give our schools the things that they need to be successful with our public school students. So we hope you'll do that. Also, we want to remind you that those of you watching tonight can connect with us at the scea.org/connect. We would love to connect with you. And if you are interested in joining our union, and yes, we are a union, and we are the state affiliate of the largest labor union in the United States, the National Education Association. Look at the bottom of your screen. Just go to jointhescea.org or text the word join to 48744. We would love to have you as a part of our movement to create the kind of schools that all educators and students deserve. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring in our guests tonight. We have a few members of the Charleston County Education Association, Sydney Van Bulk, Dorsey Montgomery, and Mrs. Candace Holmes. I think I got that right? Did I get it right, Candace?
Yes, you did.
Great. So welcome to all of you. We may have some more pop in as the night goes along. I want to start off just first of all, if you would just introduce yourself, talk about your background and your connection to our association. And we'll start, I have Sydney first, and then we'll go to Candace and then Dorsey.
Sure. My name is Sydney Van Bullock. I taught for 12 years in North Charleston. I taught early childhood. I originally joined the SCEA years ago, like kind of early on in my teaching career. And then I kind of got disconnected for a while and realized again a few years later that we were not going to make any progress if we weren't all working together. So I joined again. I left teaching at the end of last year for the same reason that so many are leaving. I just couldn't afford my rent, the stress, all of it. I ran for school board, did not win, but in continuing advocacy in any way possible.
Thank you. Candace?
Hello, everyone. My name is Candace Holmes. I am the daughter of an educator. My mother taught for 38 years in 3 different states, Berkeley, Charleston, and Dorchester County. I have been an education support professional for 19 years. And just recently, I did the opposite of Sydney. I went into the classroom. I don't know what I'm thinking, but thus far, I am enjoying it. And I can absolutely understand what she says about, you just can't afford to live on an educator's salary. Fortunately, my husband is not an educator. But I joined the SCA. I've worked in 4 states in education, and in every state, I thought it was really important to be a part of the associations that made decisions, not so much for the children, but also the ones that teach the children. I'm an advocate for children. I think it's really important that we make sure that they're okay. But we also have to make sure that the educators that deal with them on a daily basis are okay too. We have mental health needs. We, need social emotional learning and all of that good stuff, because the things that we deal with are no different from the things, unfortunately, that our students deal with. And we're supposed to have the coping skills to be able to put on the good face for 7.5, 8 hours, push through and do our job. And so I thought it was really important. I can't complain if I'm not willing to lift my voice about the things that I'm concerned with.
Thank you. You're speaking my language. Amen. All right, Dorsey.
Hey, hello, everyone. My name is Dorsey Tyree Montgomery II. I am a native of Charleston, South Carolina. I am a product of Charleston County School District. So something good can come out of Charleston County School District. I am a newly found educator, if you will. I came the alternative path. I started out in business, and I was working at Wells Fargo. Originally it was Wachovia, and then I started working at Wells Fargo. I thought we were going to get a promotion, and they called everybody in the office and they laid everyone off. And so then I said, hey, I have to do something. I relocated back to Charleston, South Carolina, and a good friend of mine who I saw, she's on the line at this moment, Miss Mary Rita Watson. I subbed in her class, and the rest is history. I am the vice president of the Charleston County Education Association, which I am a pleasure to serve the members of this particular organization, this association. They are phenomenal. And like Candace said, we can't talk about change until we're ready to induce change. And I believe that sometimes I'm a type of person, an empty wagon makes a lot of noise. But if we get enough people on and we ride this wagon to the end, they will be able to see us, and not just see us, but they'll be able to hear us and see the work that we're trying to do to help not just teachers, but educators everywhere across the board.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dorsey. So I want to, first of all, give a shout out to Adrian King, who is the president down there and helped organize this tonight's event. And I asked him, I said, do you want to be on? And he said, really, I want more members.
That is not his thing.
To be forward. I don't want to be the one who's the face of this tonight. So, but if he is watching, I want to give a shout out to Adrian. Thank him so much for helping us bring this all together tonight. He suggested, one of the things he suggested we talk about tonight is the idea that we're stronger together. Absolutely. And Sydney and I were talking a little bit beforehand, and I think, one of the things we're going to be moving towards at the SCEA is using the phrase "one union, one voice." Can you guys each talk about the importance of, I think sometimes there are advocates in our profession who feel very isolated, who feel like I'm the only one shouting out this stuff and really trying to do anything about it. Talk about the importance of all of us coming together collectively to use our voice and the power there is in doing that advocacy work.
I'll start. There's a good book that I read, and it says one can chase 1,000, but two can put 10,000 to flight. And what it was talking about is that we can join together and come together, as I stated earlier, one voice, one sound. And if one person is saying something, it's not making a lot of noise. But if 5 individuals are saying something, it's making some noise. But if we have 50 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 people saying the same thing, there's something my mom used to tell me: the whole army is not going to be out of step. Maybe 1 or 2 people may lose their footage or get out of the sync, but the whole army is not going to be out of step. And if everyone can come together as one good coalition and sing the same thing, I believe we can tear down barriers and break through walls.
I'd like to say that when we look at the discipline of education, there's so much diversity. You have a former teacher, you have a current teacher, you have someone, well, really 2 current teachers, but someone who was an educator support professional. You have administrators, you have the custodians, you have the cafeteria workers, but we're all in the same boat. Now, understand, All of us are not rowing in the same direction. I do not believe that. Some of us are drilling holes in the boat. But like Dorsey says, if we have enough people in the boat who are rowing with the tide, the ones that are rowing against will realize they're going to have to get out the boat or they're going to start rowing in the same direction. I think it's very important, especially when you think about educators, you think about teachers. I do not discount the importance of teachers. They have the daily interaction with the students, but everyone in the building is an educator because you have some individuals that the students relate to, they connect with. One of the reasons I was not a teacher for so many years was because I wasn't confined to 45 minutes, 90 minutes, an hour to impact a student's life. If a student came to me, I had the time that I could pour into their life. And so oftentimes when I go to conferences, especially when I was an education support professional, and I will not forget that now that I'm a classroom teacher, is if you really want to know who's running your building, let the cafeteria workers not show up.
Go ahead.
Let the custodians not show up. You know, we were all very passionate about cleaning and being safe and precautionary when COVID happened, but let your trash not get taken out in 300 classrooms. Let your secretaries not show up and your principal has to answer the phone. No disrespect to principals, but they don't want to do it. A lot of times they don't know how to do it, and they certainly don't know the answers to the question that the people on the other end are asking. No disrespect to them. That's just not part of their wheelhouse. That's not their job in that particular discipline. And so we cannot forget that just because a person isn't certified, may not have the education, may not have the title, because sometimes that's all that differentiates between us is the title. Just because a person is not the building principal does not mean that they're not qualified or they do not have the credentials or the ability to be a building principal. That's just not where they are in their lives. So I believe that every discipline in education has to have a voice so that we understand it's not the teacher against the custodian. It's not the principal against the cafeteria workers. We're all working together for the greater good of the children because we all play a role. If the bus drivers don't show up, the children can't get on the bus. Once the children get on the bus, if the cafeteria workers aren't there, they cannot get fed. If they don't get fed, they're going to be discipline problems, which will cause classroom management issues. If the trash doesn't get taken out, they're going to complain, ew, it stink, the bathroom's nasty. All kind of things can happen if we don't all do our part, but also help each other. And we can't have the mindset, it's not my job. It's not the children's job. They didn't ask to come here. So we have a responsibility to make sure that we make a due diligent effort and do our best to serve them. They are our customer. To serve them, to make sure that they are the most productive citizens that they can be. Because the reality is, in 20, 30 years, they're going to be working and we're going to be sitting at home or having to deal with them and their poor customer service skills, lack of soft skills, inability to count back change, things like that. So we have to realize that we're all working toward the same goal, whether we're the principal or whether we're the custodian.
And Candace, that's such a great point. And, you know, I want to drive that home that we're the only professional association that invites in everybody who works.
Every single person.
Yes.
Every single
you don't
person.
have to be a doctor. You know, if you're a part of the American Medical Association, you got to be a doctor, you know, because the nurses have their own and the doctors have their own and the PAs have their own. And there's nothing wrong with that. But imagine how much more we could get done together if we were all in the same army, regardless of our uniform, marching to the same beat. Even if you get one turned around, baby, you know, when you're line dancing and somebody comes out there new that don't know how to do the dance and you kind of help them so they don't step on your toes and you don't step on their heels. Right. That's what we got to do. We all doing the line dance.
And we have to see their struggle as our struggle. If the bus drivers are struggling with pay or working conditions, that's our struggle. That's our issue. That's not their issue to solve. Everybody needs to get together and voice. Right. Sydney, what are your thoughts?
Martin said, injustice for one is injustice for all.
That's it.
Yeah, Todd, the other day I was at a Bible study actually, and our minister was leading it, and he asked that every week we start with just like a random icebreaker type question. And this week it was like, what was what's one anniversary that's like not your birthday or like a romantic anniversary that you celebrate or remember every year? And the one that came to my mind was May 1st. And I think it's because that was the day that so many teachers walked out and went to Columbia. And it was a really powerful moment. But the
Yeah.
problem with that was that it was a moment. And
Mhm.
we all came together for this fleeting moment, and it really looked like we were going to see some change because we all stood together. But it didn't take long for the legislators to realize that we were only going to do it for one day. So they came out, they showboated, they told us what we wanted to hear. And then when it came around to actually make changes, they were like, just kidding. And we didn't hold them accountable. And then if you look at like the most recent election, we as a state did not hold them accountable. And if we aren't all standing together, teachers, parents, students, just like Candace said, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, everyone, if we're not all standing together with one strong voice, we aren't ever going to see change because the people who we currently have in office, they don't want to see change. And so it's our job to hold them accountable. And the only way that we can do that is if we're all standing together.
Right. And I think we've been divided too long. And as powerful as that moment was in May was it 2019? I think it was. And I was in Columbia, and I felt the power of that moment, of the potential of what a movement could be if it could be sustained and really well organized. And what's been so great is, as we've seen Todd come on board, and we have our leadership from our board, and we have such a great staff, and our locals are getting stronger. As we continue to build this, it needs to be built into something beyond just, a one and done kind of moment, but a movement that can sustain itself. And that's why I firmly believe and know that the SCEA is the only association in our state that stands ready and prepared with the resources that are needed to build something like that. I want to shift the conversation a little bit to, we are also the only professional association for educators, where when you join us, you're joining your local association, which is what we're talking about tonight. Your local association, the state association, and the national. I want to start off at the local level. What are some things happening that are unique to Charleston, or some maybe not unique, but that are happening in your local area that you feel like other people around the state need to be aware of? It needs to be on their minds because it may be coming to them, or it may be affecting them down the road.
Well, I know right now in Charleston, one of the things that I'm assisting with is we have somewhat of what you call a think tank. Now they're looking at standards across the board. We want that uniformity. So if you leave my high school and go to another high school in the district, we want to make sure that all of the standards are the same, that the curriculum is the same. If you come the 20th week in the year, you can pick up right where you left off. There is no differentiation in that. And so there's a think tank that they have asked some of us to partner with, to be a part of, to give our feedback, to give our insight. And I think that's very important, because if you think about it, if you're sitting in the district office all day, how often do you interact with the students? How often do you interact with the parents? How often do you know, or how much do you know about what is happening in the local school? And so the people who are part of the local organization are your teachers, your cafeteria workers, the people who are in the building that see, well, this student came from Baptist Hill High and they were learning this, but we're not doing that this week at West Ashley, and they're not doing it this week at Stahl, and they're not doing it this week at Burke. So if you get our feedback and you get our expertise, because sometimes, and it happens in every profession, once you get away from a particular job duty, you somewhat become disconnected from the responsibilities and some of the things that go along with it. If you're not in the building, you just don't know. And it changes on a daily. Education is very fluid. Each day can be different. And unfortunately now we have to think about things like safety, really, along with making sure we're educating students, they're fed. Safety now has a whole different meaning than just, making sure they come back from the fire drill, or they're not skipping, or things of that nature. You have 6-year-olds bringing guns to school, intentionally shooting teachers. You have classmates getting on a bus and coming back from a trip and having an altercation and not being able to, just talk about it like men and women should do, and killing 3 classmates. So safety looks different in schools nowadays. But if we get the local people involved, if you ask us, well, what does it look like at your school? And then you ask Dorsey, well, what does it look like at your school? And we're not singing the same song. Wait,
That's wrong.
maybe we need to have a choir rehearsal so everybody can know what we sing on Sunday. So that's one of the things we're doing here. We're participating in that. We also have fun stuff that we do, like we have a book club. When I first met Dorsey, it was at our winter social. Dorsey and I sit on a committee together for a spring social that we're planning. So we want them to know we want to get work done, but we also want to play and enjoy. And we want you to know that we appreciate you. And if nobody else recognizes the work that you do,
we do.
Good job, friend. Good job, colleague. We want to pat each other on the back, because sometimes that's the only encouragement we get is from each other, because people don't know their struggle in education.
Absolutely. Dorsey, thoughts?
Another thing that we're going on right now, because we have a major re-election going on. And so what we're doing right now, we have different times that we're meeting with the candidate that is going up for re-election in Charleston County. I think it's District 6, if I'm not mistaken.
It is.
District 6. So we are definitely working with that particular individual, and we're having a Zoom meeting so that the everyone can know his platform and understand where he's going and the avenue in which he desires to travel. So, because so oftentimes when we go to the poll, and I must say I was one, I would just go click all Democrat and walk out. Or click all the parties that I was representing at that time and walk out, not knowing that that may have a negative ramification on things that I have to deal with later on in life. And so what we're doing right now locally is we have a coffee sip. I think it's this Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's this Saturday that we are meeting and we're having coffee, and we have, like Candace said, we have discussions, and it's not always just so much do this, but we want to hear the voice of the members. We want to hear the voice of the educators, because the only way that we can implement change, we have to know that there's change that is needed. Like what Candace said, I'm a great advocate for that. I have a child that transferred from another school. I'm teaching the same thing that was taught at another institution within Charleston County. And when they got to my particular institution, they said that we didn't use books. I don't even know that why this book is here. I said it meets the standard of what we're talking about. And that is the divide that we're trying, or the gap that we're trying to fulfill, is that if we're all teaching the same course across the whole board, why is it that this particular institution gets this particular resources is on this level, and an institution that's in a rural high poverty area gets something totally different? So that's the conversations and that's the things that we are trying to implement and invoke change in.
Thank you. Sydney, you have kind of a unique perspective on this, having run for school board in the last election. And I first of all want to say what an inspiration that is to see an educator step up and run for school board. We need more people who've been in the classroom, who know what it's like to be a classroom teacher running. But what are your thoughts as you hear this conversation from that framework?
Yeah, so the election was really interesting. I learned a lot. I definitely don't regret doing it. But I think the thing that I really realized during the election is that a lot of times the education advocates who have never been in education, the people who tend to say things like, we need to listen to the teachers, are the ones who want a voice over the educators. They don't necessarily take the time to stop and listen to the educators. And I don't know, it was definitely interesting. People always want to say like, oh, we support teachers. Oh, we care about teachers. We want to help you. But at the end of the day, there is such a lack of respect for educators and the general public. And I'm not saying this about my race, like just in general, watching how discourse went down. Educators are not respected as the experts in their field, just plain and simple.
Right.
And so a lot of times people who don't necessarily have the background information, but want to do are well-meaning, can come in and do a lot of harm. I don't know. That's just it. We want to figure out a way to work together, but you've got to lift up the people you're advocating for.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
I noticed in the different races that I was paying attention to, a lot of politics is a language game. It's about figuring out what are the key phrases I need to say to get elected. What are the key phrases that work with the type of voters that I'm going to need without offending a certain number of people. So like you're saying, I can say, we need to listen to teachers, but which teachers, and when they say stuff and I don't like it, are we still listening to them? It's kind of like there's so much underneath empty political aphorisms like that has to be dug into, and we typically don't take the time to dig into it. So people just hear what they want to hear, whether it's about critical race theory or indoctrination or Marxism, whatever buzzwords the political pundits and strategists have said, say this stuff, push this button, and that'll get you votes. We end up not having a whole lot of substance behind our discussions, particularly, with the race with Weaver and Ellis. We saw substance, I think, from Lisa, but with Weaver was mostly talking points from conservative think tanks. I want to shift to a statewide issue that I brought up at the beginning of the live stream, and I'd really like to pick all of your brains about the voucher bill. I think folks are now becoming familiar with the idea that the Senate is trying to push through very quickly this S39, which, we have this teacher shortage and crisis, and the first thing that they're concerned about doing is funneling money from public to private schools, which seems odd. But what are your thoughts as you hear about another push for vouchers in terms of how that's going to affect schools in Charleston and statewide?
Well, I would say that Charleston is really unique in the fact that we are, unfortunately, at the front lines of privatization. And so there has been for almost my entire career this push, because vouchers weren't a thing, because we weren't able to funnel money into the private schools. They created these public-private partnerships, which are really blurred lines and murky. And so there has been a very strong push for privatization in Charleston for a long time. So unfortunately, this county is kind of at the forefront of that. And so we need to be the loudest in fighting back against it.
Dorsey or Candace?
I will admit there have been times when I've lived in school districts where I worked in the public schools and my children went to private school. That was a personal choice that I made for our family, but my children have both attended private schools and graduated from them. I don't have a problem with private schools. I don't have a problem with money going to private schools. What I do have a problem with is taking money from an industry that's already underfunded, which is public school education, and funneling it into a place that most times students who are in private schools, they are, I'd say, more affluent than just middle class. Their parents can afford for them to go to private schools, because you have some private schools that are not cheap at all. They're very expensive. They're very exclusive in that they really have the mindset of, I am paying to tell you what I want you to do. And so as long as I'm paying, I pay the cost to be the boss, is what my mom says. And I get it. But if you can do that, why do you need these public dollars that all of us pay taxes into this? It's like the public roads, I pay taxes for the road to be fixed. But for the most part, you can't tell me I can't drive on any of the roads that my taxes pay to maintain. Now, whether my taxes to maintain them, I beg to differ, but that's a different show on a podcast. But what I'm saying is, we cannot take this money that everybody, this pot that everybody puts ingredients in and say, oh, well, we're only going to give the ingredients, or we're going to give this much of the ingredients to this particular group of people who don't even want to put ingredients in the pot that we already have. That's what I have a problem with. And the reason I don't have a problem with private schools is because I believe in choice. You know, if that's what you want to do for your child, hey, because there are teachers that work in private school and they understand the cause, they understand the fight for whatever reason, they've made that choice to work in that particular type of setting. So don't want to alienate them, but do not take dollars from an industry or a part of the industry that is already so underfunded. And I thought about this example when we would talk about money. Don't get me wrong. If we need to build a new school for the communities and the families that are served by Morningside Middle, I am absolutely all for it. What is it, Dorsey? $66 million that it's going to cost them to build a new building. It's going to be expensive. If they need it, I absolutely support it. But where is the money? And why do we have to have so much discussion and debate about raising teacher salaries? Making sure that students who go to school in rural areas, if we ever have a pandemic again, have the access to the internet that they need without having to beg Sprint and Xfinity and T-Mobile. Can you please give us some hotspots? No, that should be there. And this pandemic really showed us the disparities between inner city or more urban districts and rural districts. So, and we just can't afford that to have that happen again, because here we are 2 or 3 years later, we're coming back into the building and these children are like deer in headlights. They have no clue because they went home for spring break 1 year and did not come back for another 2 years. And that's a shock to anybody's system. And in that time, they had to deal with tragedy and trauma. And trust me, once every 2 weeks, having a lesson about it is not going to fix it. So we need to be very intentional and be good stewards. That's what we call in the church, being a good steward over the finances that are part of our responsibility.
Absolutely. And Jenny is watching. I want to thank you, Jenny Klitsch, for this comment. She kind of echoes what Senator Mike Fanning was alluding to in a post recently. She says, in addition to excluding families who cannot afford the tuition or tuition minus voucher, they often exclude families of students with disabilities. And Mike was saying that the voucher is $6,000, but the average private school tuition in South Carolina is over $14,000. So how does that help a child in poverty if you still have to have another, $7,000 or $8,000 to make up? Not to mention the cost of transportation. Maybe they don't have a free and reduced lunch program. So it's the idea that this is somehow going to magically help students in poverty is to me just it's like a ruse. It's like a shell game. It's like, yeah, we're going to talk about poverty. We're going to talk about helping kids, but it's not really about that. Ultimately, it's about allowing the free market to tap into dollars that are going to public schools right now. Dorsey,
more alienation, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Dorsey?
I thank you. I definitely have to piggyback with Candace because this is a topic that I'm very sensitive with, because at any given moment there's a fine line, and I never want to cross the line with my emotions due to the fact that I teach at a high poverty rural school in Charleston County. And my school, even though we teach all the same thing, does not look like other schools. And so because there's already a deficit and there's already lack of funding where I'm at, I like you said, I advocate for private school. I went to a private school for a little duration of my tenure while I was coming up through grade school. So I went to a private school, but I'm reminded of the nursery rhyme called The Little Red Hen. When you have those in the public sector who are doing all the work, and we're grinding out the wheat, and we're tearing down the wheat, and we're kneading it, and we're doing everything to make a piece of bread, and no one wants to assist us in the grunt work. But when we present the beautiful piece of bread to the public, everybody wants a piece of it. But you don't understand the grunt work that we have to do as educators with the lack of funding to get what needs done. So I don't advocate for the private school dipping into the fundings for this from the state, and that's just my stance on it, because I know what I have to overcome as an educator on a day-to-day basis with the limited resources that we have. We have a 99% of free and reduced lunch at my particular institution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lindsay, thank you for joining us. I know you had a busy schedule today. I appreciate that you were able to get logged in. Could you first of all just like a quick introduction about yourself, and then as you've been listening to tonight, we've been talking about the importance of our collective voice, and also we just got into the voucher bills. So introduce yourself and feel free to voice your opinions.
Well, hi, I'm Lindsay Stone. I'm a music teacher for elementary schools. I've been a teacher for 13 years, and I've taught in all Title I schools, rural and urban and suburban. So all different types. And I agree with what Dorsey said about our schools look different. My school that I'm currently at has, we have about 650-ish students, and about 450 to 500 of them are English language learners.
Mm-hmm.
And and I feel like these voucher programs, they're not going to benefit my students because, one, they don't have transportation to get to the private schools.
Right.
Most of my kids are bus riders, and if they, for whatever reason, miss the bus, or
it's a wrap,
they just don't come to school.
They ain't coming.
And so a voucher to go to a private school isn't going to do anything for them because they still have to get there. Also, ESOL, English language learners, would be considered a disability in some private schools. They aren't equipped to handle students that don't speak English. And then also, my main point for vouchers is send your kids to private school if you want to, homeschool them. You know, it's your right as a parent to educate your children how you see fit. But until public education is fully and adequately funded,
right,
you can't compare us to what is happening in a private school, because you don't know what we could be because we've never been adequately funded.
That's good.
That's
what
right.
What we are doing with what little money we have,
it's phenomenal.
Volumes to what
Right.
we could do if we had what
The
the state
resources.
has promised us year after
Right.
year after year after year, that they have, that's in the law, that they haven't actually followed.
Like
And
Dorsey
Lindsay-
said, we making the bread, but we had to make the stove too, baby. So we really started from the bottom and we're here. So absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
and to piggyback off of what you said, Lindsay, private schools are not legally obligated to make accommodations for students. So no matter what the disability is, they
They're
are
not
not
required.
obligated, and they have the right to kick students out. Like if a student's not performing or they have behavior issues, they can just get rid of them. Whereas a public school is going to be a place where every child is welcomed and cared for. And while many private schools will give accommodations and be loving and caring for all, they are not legally obligated to it. And there are plenty that will not.
So then this is the question. If they're going to allow this voucher system to be in place, are they also going to include a legislature that goes along with it that says you cannot discriminate against students that have these disabilities? You have to provide the programs, because if you want this public dollars and you want it to look like what a school looks like Dorsey says, his school doesn't look like my school doesn't look like your school. I remember when I was in high school, and we're talking almost 30 years ago, or has it been over 30 years? Anyway, but they did a comparison. It was an article in the Post and Courier I graduated from Stratford High School,
Mhm.
and you did too?
Yeah.
Hey girl, fellow knight. So they did a comparison. We sorry, Todd. We sorry. They did a comparison between Stratford High School and Cane Hoy High School. Now, what was interesting, the principal at Cane Hoy High School at that time, I was classmates with his son at Stratford. But when you looked at the comparison of the resources they had,
Right.
it was like, who did this? Who wrote this article? Because it wasn't even apples and oranges. I mean, and that's what we're looking at when we're talking about the differences between public and private schools. So if you're going to compare us, or you're going to say, well, they're going to be able to do the same things that you're doing. No. We already can't do what they're doing, because we cannot tell a student, well, you can't come here because, you know, you have an
A
accommodation.
behavior issue.
You have an IEP, you have you're grieving, and it's going to come out, you know, and you fighting daily. You know, you've been traumatized. We can't discriminate against those students. So if you're going to take our dollars, then take our advice and our expertise and write laws that will mandate that you are a good steward with this money, just like you want us to be, but you're not giving us enough money to be a steward over. Because we making $1 out of a dime, baby. They took the nickel from us too, you know. But there's so much in place. And Sydney talked about earlier about, we went there and we did not hold them accountable, but there's so much accountability for us who are underappreciated, underfunded. We're not professional enough. We don't know what we're doing when their children don't get what they want them to get. But when they need a recommendation letter for college, go talk to your teacher. But I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
Why would you come to me? You see what I'm saying? So it's a double-edged sword, and they only want to look at part of it. But we're saying, no, we're looking at the whole loaf of bread we had to bake, baby, with the stove we had to make, because you wouldn't even give us a stove.
Yeah. And that goes to Jenny's point. I just want to read this really quick, because I think this is a good point, and then I'll go right to you, Dorsey. But Jenny was saying that the same people that have been advocating for vouchers are the same people that, you know, were kept calling us a failures and kept undermining public education decade after decade, kept voting against funding education, public education, and then all of a sudden say, hey, it's not working, or, you know, it's broken, the system's broken, we got to do something about it, and then come in. And our solution is let's take the money from you and give it to this private school. And there's not even any accountability system or oversight or anything like that to determine whether that's a good use of the money. And it's just a money grab. It's just a private free market money grab that they're trying to pretend is giving people choice and helping students in poverty. Dorsey, thoughts?
And that's what I wanted to say in reference to what Jenny said earlier. Jenny said, she said that we are required by the state to have a report card that's published every single year, and it links and it determines what we did that year prior. And so did we have completers coming from the CTE department? Did we have gains on the MAP testing? Did we have gains on the WIN testing? Did we have gains on the SAT, ACT? Are we having a high rate of students who are graduating? And so the public schools are held to that system. But private schools are, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe that's implemented for them, because I don't think they are held to a certain report card, because it's really that Burger King, and I hate to say that because I don't want to be insensitive, that Burger King mentality, my way, right away, because as Candace said, I'm giving you $10 million, and I'm a stakeholder in it, and I'm on the board of trustees. And now when my English teacher comes and tells that Mary Sue didn't, I'm sorry, anybody, I'm not going to use his name. When my English teacher comes and say, my daughter Watermelon, that's good, Montgomery, daughter Watermelon didn't do what was supposed to be done. Now I go to the teacher and say, I pay your salary.
That part.
Because I pay your salary, so I need this B, to move from the B to an A. And see, that's the some of the things or scenarios that we have in the private school sector, and even downtown, and we don't like to talk about it. I know I was a part of the launch of one when they didn't let certain African-American students come in because they looked at their record. And granted, they had a little discipline problem, but why did they have that discipline problem? Because, you know, dad might have not been there. They might not have the resources they have. And so you didn't let them into the lottery, or when they were in the lottery, you excluded them because of something you saw on black and white, and you painted a narrative, and now that child can't get into that particular school. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. If you guys don't mind, we're at 7:45, and I'd like to get to one more topic of discussion that I think has been in the news a lot and on a lot of people's minds, and this is the notion that there are some folks wanting to sort of dictate, the content of our classrooms by sort of whitewashing, and no pun intended there, but whitewashing the truth of history. We see, for example, Ron DeSantis in Florida not allowing an AP African American Studies class. We see folks that are accusing us of Marxist indoctrination because you simply, talked about racism or genocide of indigenous peoples. I mean, it's like we're seeing this whole framework of potential censorship with books and with the curriculum to sort of strip out anything that would potentially show parts of our history that we should be learning from, or horrible parts of our history that we should continue to be sharing with the next generation to ensure that those things don't repeat. As you hear these things, you hear this type of rhetoric, whether it's around critical race theory, around Marxist indoctrination, whether it's the stuff from DeSantis. What have you guys been thinking about, and what are your sort of fears about that and hopes?
As a music teacher, I don't really have set curriculum like other classroom teachers do, and a lot of music history is founded on Black and African American people and their music and how that music got to the United States. Mm-hmm. And it does a disservice, not only because you have to face the ugly parts of history to not repeat it, but also it skips over some of the most beautiful parts of history, because you're skipping over the horrendous stuff, but you're also skipping over the resiliency and the determination and the building up of a people that were so oppressed, and how that progress is continuing, and how the progress needs to continue. And as far as book banning and things of that nature, first, I think you need to read the book before you can decide that you're going to even ask for it to be banned, which I feel like is not common practice. With a lot of the books that people are deciding to ban, they just read the back cover and say, oh, this is not appropriate. But when you look at, Supreme Court decided laws, freedom of speech is also part of the library. When they start to ban books and stop access to these books, that starts to infringe upon people's free speech. And I think a lot of parents just forget that their kids have little devices like this in their hands where they can access anything and everything they want to access that would be in a book that they're trying to ban. Right. It feels like a futile argument, and they're trying to maintain control, which I understand. The world is a scary place, but banning a book from a library or banning a discussion about slavery is not going to stop them from learning about it, but it is going to stop them from potentially learning the correct history and the right way the correct way to speak about these things and to learn about these things. And it really opens their children up to learning ideals that they might not be actually so excited about them learning if they actually stopped and thought about what's available on the internet to all of their children through their little phones.
Mm-hmm.
I think my perspective from just running for office, that fear sells, right? And we're seeing this across the country, but creating fear creates votes for these people. And so does Ron DeSantis really care about these books in these classrooms? No, but he knows that if he gets behind a microphone and spews all of this hatred, he's going to win votes. Right. And we, in South Carolina and in Charleston, we should be very fearful of what the future is coming, what's about to come, because we have a state superintendent that ran on a platform of anti-woke indoctrination. We have a school board that predominantly ran on that same platform, and they are about to start the process to find a new superintendent. And so they have a majority on our school board. And if the majority is now who is looking for our next superintendent, are they going to find someone that represents all of the students, or are they going to find someone that's going to push their own personal agenda? And their personal agenda is not changing things in the classroom, but their personal agenda is winning that seat again in 4 years or 2 years, depending on which seat they ran for. I mean, just like this prayer malarkey that's going on right now. Todd, I don't know if you're aware, but our school board is trying to change wording so that they can bring in religious leaders before the school board meetings to pray, which is a practice that's been happening, but there wasn't a policy allowing it. So now they want to officially allow it. One, it shouldn't be happening, but two, it's already been happening. So why are they writing this policy? Because it gets them airtime. It gets them their name, their face out there. It creates this this fake, I don't know what the word that I'm looking for, but it essentially gives them more power. And if we aren't fighting back against it, if we're not using our collective voice, it's the loudest voices that are heard. So we need to make sure that our voices are just as loud as this small minority that has been screaming.
I think for me, and educated people are empowered people. And when you empower people, you cannot manipulate them. And so that goes back to what she says in respect to politics. If you provide people with all the information they need to make informed decisions, you can influence their decisions based on your agenda. We are a comfortable people. We do not like change. We do not like to be taken outside of our comfort zones. And like Lindsay stated, some of these things that we are needing to teach are necessary for them to understand how we got to where we are today. What they're teaching now starts somewhere in the middle, nowhere near the beginning. Right. And if we don't teach the full scope of the history, we are absolutely doomed to see it repeat itself. And we can see it now. If you look at even the prison system, the prison system is just another form of slavery. But if you don't understand what slavery really looked like, you won't understand what these people are experiencing in prison. If we don't look at the school to prison pipeline, understanding it was, and like I said, I'm the daughter of a retired teacher. My son was in 3rd grade in private school, took his standardized test, and I got the scores and they were good, but it hit me. I was like, whoa, he's 7. In 10 years, if he had not done well on this test and they were looked at by the state, they would prepare a bed for him in a prison, which is for profit. And all things work together. They are intertwined. And so if you leave out bits and pieces, it compromises people's ability to understand what is really going on. A lot of people don't realize that prisons are for-profit entities. That's why these governors, these states don't have a problem allowing these industries to bring in these prisons, because it keeps the economy going. That's why when we get into wars, they don't have a problem staying in the war, because you have to make the machinery, you have to make the equipment, you have to make the weapons, you got to make the planes, you got all of this. It fuels the economy. And so if we take it upon ourselves to say, you know what, we're not going to even tell them about it, not realizing that just like they have access to it on their smartphones, if they don't have the understanding, because access is one thing, understanding is something else. If they don't have the proper context, if they're not given the opportunity and the ability to ask the questions so that they really understand the knowledge that they are being provided, once again, 20, 30 years, they're not going to be able to have a conversation. They can't count back change. I mean, we're already seeing where the lack of brain that is being used is affecting the quality of life that we are living.
Right.
And so I absolutely believe that we've got to teach the good and the bad, the happy, the sad, the sunshine, the rain, because you can't have one without the other. So you can't teach white if you don't teach the contrast black. And if you're going to teach all white, you got to teach all black, because then you're giving a skewed view of what it really is. And that's not reality. And that's a disservice to the students.
100%. Dorsey.
I'm going to piggyback off everything that was said. It's 7:56, and I don't want to get into banter because it would definitely go over into maybe 8 o'clock, 8:15. And so I'm just going to say something that I live by. We can't conquer what we don't confront. And once we get to the point that we confront it, and I live by having the hard conversations. So oftentimes we want to dust and push things under the mat. But the thing about the mat is we have individuals that are walking on the mat. So what we think is hidden every so often comes out or seeps out the side. And so that's what's going on around. We've been sweeping and sweeping and sweeping things under the mat for years, and now individuals are starting to walk on it and say, this is an uneven, unlevel walking plane that I'm on, and things are starting to spew out. But we cannot have a good conversation until we go back and have the hard conversation. Those conversations that make me feel uncomfortable, but not so much uncomfortable that I am brought to wrath, but I'm so uncomfortable until I'm willing to implement change.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. We're running out of time, and I want to make sure we honor the time. Thank you to Sydney, Candace, Lindsay, Dorsey. I also want to thank Adrian King, the president, who helped organize tonight's event. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. Mary Rita Watson.
Yeah, Mary Rita.
Dorothy, sorry you couldn't get in. Hopefully we can get you in on a future live stream. Our executive director, Todd Jake, is doing an amazing job. Thank you so much for tuning in. Adrian also tuned in. Jenny Klitsch with a lot of really great comments. So if you're just tuning in, go into the Facebook and check out Jenny's comments. A lot of great stuff there.
Yeah, she was excellent. She was excellent.
She was.
Flashette, Christopher Holmes, Candace, I guess you know Christopher.
Yeah, I belong to him.
You claim him. So I just want to thank you all for what you do. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for being a part of our local association, which really that is where everything really comes from, that local level. If you don't have a strong local association, it's really difficult to drive change. So thank you for
Todd, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for opening your platform
and this opportunity.
Yes, thank you. You thanked everybody, but we have to thank you for opening your platform and letting us have this dialogue and this recourse. It was phenomenal. So thank you. I salute you. Thank you.
Let's do it again. And here's the thing too. If you guys want to develop your own platforms, let me know, and I'll be more than happy to come down there and work with you to develop your own.
All right, pack a bag.
Anytime you want. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good night. All right.
Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
And a great day tomorrow. We made it. It's Friday.
All right. Thank you. All right. I'm going to remove everybody and just say a couple closing words. Bye, everybody. Bye, Sydney. Thank you again to all the guests tonight. Again, to Adrian King, the president of the Charleston County Education Association, for organizing our panelists tonight. And thank you for tuning in. The last thing I want to mention is we talked at the beginning about the importance of using our collective voice. We talked the importance of having one union with one voice. We've had some really great moments as educators throughout our history in South Carolina. It's time to really come together in one movement. There's only one professional association in the state of South Carolina that is a union. That is the South Carolina Education Association. There's only one organization that is talking about the issues that we just mentioned in depth and really, really digging in, supporting and advocating for all kinds of issues, including opposing vouchers. We are for honesty in education. We're pro-truth. We're standing with LGBTQ educators and students. We are providing you wellness and learning resources. We're the only professional association that allows you, when you join our movement, to join at the local, the state, and the national level. You're joining the largest labor union in the United States, the National Education Association, with 3.2 million members, and all of the benefits that membership in that amazing organization provides. We would love to have you. If you're interested in joining, you can go to jointhescea.org. You can text the word join to 48744. And the most important thing about our movement is we need you and your voice. And we want you to be on a future live stream. We want you to podcast. We want you to create videos. We want you to write for us. We want you to use your voice and write your state leaders. We want you to give speeches and presentations. And we want to equip you to do that. So if you're interested in doing that and getting off of the sidelines and being a part of a movement that's truly going to bring sustainable change to the state of South Carolina, to provide the kind of schools that our educators deserve, to ensure that our schools are fully funded, to ensure that we protect the institution of public education and the students that our public schools serve. Join us. Join the SCEA. Have a good night.